Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Just in time.
How fortunate we all are to be gathered here in God's house at Avatar's Abode. It is the most sacred spot in the southern hemisphere of this planet. Rescued within living faith. This is a story of a rescue of an 8-year-old boy. And this is a story of the rescue of a 73-year-old crusty heart. And this is a story of the awakening heart of a reluctant carer. Over 55 years ago, at the age of 18, I shipped out as a bosun's mate with the United States Coast Guard. I saw rigorous duty, deep water duty in the North Atlantic for 2 years. The Guard's life-saving motto was, you have to go out, you don't have to come back. It was during this duty at sea that Meher Baba first started to weave the thread of selfless service into the sail canvas of my life. The foreshadowing. In 1884, the American artist Winslow Homer painted his masterpiece, The Lifeline. It depicts the rescue of an unconscious woman from a stricken ship using a then new rescue technique of a breeches buoy that was pulled back and forth from the ship to the shore on a line. In Homer's painting, the rescuer's face is hidden by a wind-whipped scarf. In 2002, David Berry painted his rendition of The Lifeline. Berry reveals the rescuer's face to be that of the avatar of the age, Meher Baba. He also opens the eyes of the young woman, thereby making her conscious of the rescue. With these two enhancements, he renames his adaptation Surrender, explaining that one must be fully conscious when surrendering to the Master. My wife Carolyn and I bought Surrender during an art show that Berry had at the Meher Spiritual Center in South Carolina in November of 2002. It hung over our fireplace mantel for many years while living on the rugged coast of Maine in New England. It spoke to me of my life that had been deeply associated with the sea and of my daily surrendering to Meher Baba. Little did I know that 18 years later, after surviving a trial of a lifetime, the painting was to take on a whole new spiritual dimension. The following account is of the rescue ordeal in an ocean river, which resulted in surrender, embodying living faith. The rescue. Friday, the 4th of September 2020, was a sunny and warm spring day as Carolyn and I walked along the sandy banks of the Maruchu River towards its mouth that empties into the South Pacific Ocean in the city of Maroochydore, Queensland. We had been driving down to this area known as Cotton Tree Beach every 2 weeks, starting back in April, to watch the progress of a major seawall being built at the southern headland of the river where a caravan park is located. On this walk, we saw that the big earth-moving equipment was gone, but there was a 15-meter sand dredger barge positioned off the end of the 250-meter sand pit, forming the seaward end of the Cotton Tree Beach. We decided to walk out on the spit and observe the dredge pumping sand through the large floating pipes onto the spit and over to the seawall. As we crossed over the narrow beach to the base of the sand spit, we saw a couple of camper families and their kids from the caravan park splashing about in the shallows. It was an idyllic, subtropical river beach scene. About 2/3 of the way down, out on spit, I noticed that the outgoing tidal current was picking up speed to a couple of knots, or almost 4K an hour. Then, a few steps more, I looked up again to gauge the current and saw, the 3 children about 30 meters out in the river. One was on a small paddleboard and another in the water swimming next to the board. The third child was swimming 5 meters down current from the other two. I looked around for any parents and immediately remarked to Carolyn that I didn't see any. The two families that we saw earlier were 150 meters back on the beach. Glancing back at the lone child, I could see that he was struggling and getting caught in a stronger current of 3 knots, causing him to separate from the other two who seemed to be maintaining position. We were the only adults nearby. I knew I had to go in. There was no other option. Carolyn helped me strip off my clothes down to my boxers and t-shirt. I turned and started running into the water. The child was struggling and calling out for help. He was headed for the barge, and I calculated my interception course to head him off and meet him at the floating pipes as I dove and started swimming. I can remember asking myself, can I do this? At that point, a sense of calm pervaded. Then all my years of maritime experience and deep sea survival and life-saving training kicked in. This is a satellite shot of Cotton Tree. You can see here we go. Here's the caravan park. This is going out on the spit. That blue circle is where the two families were located. This yellow is the outgoing tide and out to the ocean. And the red box is the dredger. The barge was positioned 30 meters off the end of the spit. Its starboard side, the right side, was broadside to the ebbing tidal current. The dredge's deafening diesels were running full bore, driving the pump that was sucking up sand and discharging it through the floating pipe. The pipe was coming off the stern or the back end. And let me show you here. This shows the current going out over in this way. This is the end of the spit. This is the dredge. The yellow line is the floating pipe, and it connects up to a rigid pipe up here on the sand. So the dredge was pumping the sand up through. This is where I went in. Number 2 is where I met the boy. The dredge is, okay, excuse me. The pipe was coming off the stern, the back end of the dredge. And it was moored in a large arc that straightened out parallel to and 10 meters up current from the starboard side of the barge. It continued leading back towards the shore, connecting to the rigid pipe on the beach. There was no one to be seen on deck as I swam towards the child. I met up with the child just 2 meters before the floating pipe, and that's number 2. I grabbed him, and he did not put up any resistance. I had figured that we would let the tidal current take us to the pipe and then work our way along it, hand over hand, back to the beach. However, as soon as we made contact with the pipe, it submerged. I didn't realize that the pipe had neutral buoyancy and that any heavy pressure would cause it to sink below the water's surface. It was like breaching a dam, and the rush of the backed up current sent both of us tumbling over the pipe, driving us to the threatening barge. My energy was beginning to wane, but I managed to swim back to the pipe with the boy in tow against a current of 3 knots and choppy water beating against our faces. The 60-meter diameter rubber-clad pipe was slimy and difficult to grab a hold of. That's it down there, you can see it. And it was about there was a spiral ribbing encircling it about 60 meters apart, which allowed somewhat of a finger hold, but not enough to stabilize me. I tried to get the boy up on the pipe to ride it like a raft so that I didn't have to continue to hold him. But the current was becoming too strong. I kept at it, and by the 3rd attempt, I had him halfway up on the partially submerged pipe. I must have loosened my grip on the boy to find a better handhold. And then he suddenly tumbled off the pipe He slipped out of my grip and was being carried by the current to the barge. If he hit the barge, he would have been dragged under by the force of the current and then lost. I dared not drop my hold on the pipe and tried to reach out for him, but it was too late. I had no other choice but to let go of the pipe and swim to him. I grabbed him 2 or 3 meters from the pipe. The current turbulence was increasing, as was the water chop. We both went under and swallowed a mouthful, and I swallowed a mouthful of seawater. I came back up at the boy and looked at the pipe, realizing I was losing ground. I didn't know how I could make it to the back to the pipe and stay away from the barge. I was just too tired, and my body was still in a weakened state of recovery from a recent illness, and my right shoulder was trying to heal from an old torn rotor cuff injury. My prime motive was to save the boy, even at the cost of my own life. The barge loomed nearer with its deafening roar. At that point, I blinked out. And then, all of a sudden, we were back at the pipe. I have no memory of how it happened. I saw that my left hand had a hold of a torn section of the spiral ribbing that fit perfectly. The boy was on my back, holding my shoulders, and was unexpectedly calm for an 8-year-old boy. I started to assess our situation. I saw that my hands were freely bleeding from cuts I had received from the rusty steel cables that moored the pipe, and I was dead tired. I had been in the water for 15 minutes with the boy. I knew that I didn't have the strength to get us back to shore, and no one appeared from the barge. I looked back to the sand spit and saw that Carolyn was still there alone and 30 meters away. I realized that she couldn't have known the severity of the situation and how exhausted I was. I mustered what little energy I had left and yelled out to her to get help immediately. She turned and screamed, waving her arms to the adults 150 meters away, as only a mother can scream. I continued to hold on to the pipe with the boy in my back. I could feel the utter exhaustion sinking into my body like lead that was weighing me down. I laid my head down on the pipe for some kind of rest, but the rushing water made it impossible. Another 5 minutes crept by, and then I saw a man running into the water near Carolyn with a small child's plastic kayak in tow. As he swam out to us, a second man followed directly behind. The current and wave chop had increased, and it was all they could do just to get out to us. They ended up within a meter of us, both of them holding onto the pipe, with the kayak in between them. I shifted my handhold grip to my right hand to get closer to the men. After a minute, I was able to transfer the boy to the nearest man. We were both holding onto the boy, one arm each. Only when the man assured me that he had the boy did I relinquish my grip. They immediately got the boy up on the kayak. He was safe. But the current was too strong for the men to get back to shore. We yelled out to Carolyn to get more help. The boy started screaming. I got him to look at me, and I calmly said, "You don't need to do that. Help will come." He quieted down immediately. The rescued. My strength was completely drained, and I started to lose my grip on the pipe. I glanced back to the barge. Finally, a crew member was on deck surveying the scene. With no strength to yell out, I waved to him for help. He disappeared to the other side of the barge. Turning my view back to the sand spit, I saw a third man with a 3-meter paddle board enter the water and swiftly paddle out to us. He maneuvered his board next to me. So that I was in between his board and the pipe. He said to climb on board, but I mumbled I was too weak. He took my left arm and pulled it across the board. Then while I gripped the side, he pulled up on my legs till I was flat on the board, chest down. Safe. After 25 minutes in the water, the rescuer became the rescued. At that moment, I heard a motor skiff from the barge come around the outside of the pipe. The two men in the water with the rescued boy shouted, "Take the boy first!" I was able to glance up and see two crewmen lift the boy from the kayak into the boat, and they motored off to the beach. Moments later, the skiff returned up against the pipe with shouts of, "Climb aboard!" But I was non-responsive. Then I was being lifted up under my arms by the two crewmen and fell into the bottom of the boat. I was motored back to the sand spit about halfway down to the beach and helped ashore with Carolyn waiting for me. With Carolyn's assistance, I stumbled towards the two families on the beach, telling her that she almost lost me back there. With each step, my chest became more painful and heavy. My breathing became labored. Someone gave me a water bottle and towel. I rinsed out my mouth and gargled. They told us that 2 ambulances were on the way. I plopped down on a bench with the people around me. Carolyn pointed out the boy who I saved, who was lying on a towel. I remember him smiling at me. Carolyn told me that the parents were not there, but that she got the name and number of the woman who had been given in charge of overseeing the children. Within a few minutes, the paramedics had arrived. I remember very little. I was cold and everything was fading out and turning white. The paramedics said I was pasty white. I was hooked up to the ECG scanner and they immediately knew I was having a heart attack. I was strapped into a stretcher and placed in the ambulance. The boy went in another ambulance, and Carolyn was following in another paramedic's car. It was off to the Sunshine Coast University Hospital. The paramedics were stabilizing me and giving me medications to relieve the chest pain. They also tried to lighten things up, and they said they detected an accident. "Where are you from?" I answered the state of Maine in New England, and not wanting them to think I was just a tourist, I interjected that I was getting my Australian citizenship on the 23rd of this month. An immediate reply. "Good on you, mate. You just passed your last citizenship test by saving the life of an Aussie kid." Both ambulances arrived at the emergency entrance together. As I was being taken out of the vehicle on the stretcher, I glanced over and saw the boy on his stretcher. A woman was standing near the head of the boy and talking to the paramedic, who in turn pointed towards me. The boy got up on his elbow and beamed at me. The woman, Matthew's mother, came over, placed her hand on my shoulder, and simply said, "Thank you." And tears flowed down my cheeks. The emergency cardiac team rolled into action. Raised troponin levels in my blood indicated heart damage. I was immediately sent in for an angiogram with a possible stent procedure, depending on what was found. But very little heart disease was indicated, and my arteries and valves were fairly strong and clear. Then an ultrasound was conducted, which showed mild heart damage. Diagnosis was Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, or stress-induced heart attack, brought on by the overwhelming traumatic exertion of the rescue. I was in hospital for 2 nights and 3 days. Prognosis: after 6 months of heart medications rehabilitation, my heart should completely heal, which it did. However, I still take blood pressure medication. The boy Matthew was released after a couple of hours with no complications. The next day in hospital, I received this email from my sister. "So proud of you, because you just jumped in and did what was needed. A child now has a chance to do great things. Parents are not mourning an unthinkable loss. Take care of yourself now. Love, Martha." Retrospective. Early in the evening, after Carolyn was assured that I was going to be fine and safe, our dear friends, the Brufords, came by to drive her home. And they continued transporting her to and from the hospital over the next 2 days. Even with all the heart and pain meds flowing through my veins, I could not sleep the first night. The day's rescue events started to replay with deep and overwhelming emotions. Having suffered from PTSD in the past, I realized that I not only needed to process those 25 torturous minutes in the river, but that there was a deeper need to recall the whole sequence and details of the rescue. Something far more than saving the life of Matthew was at play. I am a master mariner and have been a sailor for most of my 73 years. I have saved 2 lives many years before, but those do not compare to the depth of this particular ordeal. I am also a follower of Meher Baba of India, the avatar of the age, for about as long as I've been a sailor. Baba used my sailing life to bring me to him, and then wove my consciousness and heart into the voyage upon his ocean of love. So he became the master mariner, and I was the crew, endeavoring to carry out his every command, however large and small. The retelling of the rescue started that Saturday morning, first with Carolyn and the Brufords, then continuing through the hospital stay in the following week with medical staff, family, and friends. With these multiple retellings, a thread began to be disclosed that wove itself through the narrative. This thread was the revealing of Meher Baba's guiding hand throughout the deliverance. There are 5 revelations of this thread that went into the canvas of this rescue. Shoes. When I walk on the beach, I never remove my shoes. I wear custom orthotics and find it painful to walk barefoot. But this day, I felt an inward direction to take them off before we walked out into the sandpit. This saved me a whole minute in stripping down, the crucial minute that was needed for me to get out to the boy before he was swept into the barge. T-shirt. Every morning, Baba and I internally discuss what clothes I'll wear for that day. On that Friday, my hand landed on a t-shirt that I had not worn in over a year. It is this t-shirt that I am wearing today. Don't worry, be happy. Avatar Meher Baba. This is what I wore during the rescue. The hair. For decades, I have worn a strand of Baba's hair around my neck. It is encapsulated in a small silver tube that is shackled onto a gold necklace, the links of which are a sailor's knot. The chain ended up outside of my t-shirt in view for the entire rescue. It's on right now, but I'm wired up. Jumping in. My body had been in a weakened state because of a long, enduring illness. Additionally, I was in rehab for severe right shoulder rotator cuff injuries. This is why, as I jumped into the water, I asked myself, can I do this? That sense of calm that immediately came over me was Meher Baba. It was neither a physical presence nor a feeling of a companion next to me. Rather, it was the unequivocal awareness of Baba taking over and working through me to save the child. Near drowning. At the moment when the boy and I were being swept to the barge without any hope of getting back to the pipe, I remember that my last thought before I blanked out was that to save the life of the child, even at the cost of my own. As I stated, I have no memory of what transpired from when I blanked out to all of a sudden finding the boy and myself back at the pipe. However, during the first night in hospital, as I replayed the events of the rescue, it became undeniably clear that Meher Baba had used the hand of God to lift and sweep us to the safety of the pipe. So this tracing of the thread and its consequential revealing of Baba's ever-guiding hand provided much-needed solace. But what was it that was begging to be told of the deeper importance of this ordeal? What was it that could possibly go beyond the saving of young Matthew and of me? The answer was provided in 2 parts. On the Saturday afternoon of my hospital stay, I had a session with a staff social worker. It was only the second retelling of the rescue, and it was still very emotional for me as I choked up with tears several times. After I finished, she asked me if I could put a name to the overwhelming feeling that brought on the tears. Was it the fear of drowning or the dread of possible failure? I leaned back in my bed and thought for a bit. I realized that I had never been afraid during the entire rescue. And then, without any thought, I said, gratitude. Gratitude that the boy Matthew was saved. And gratitude that I came back to my lifelong companion, Carolyn. Gratitude that my master Meher Baba blessed me with this task and graced me with the strength to carry it out without concern for the result. A few days later, when I went to search online about what Baba said of gratitude, when I opened up my morning emails, there was this quote from the Meher Baba Los Angeles Center weekly update. Gratitude is the art of accepting life, moment by moment, in whatever situation one finds oneself, as being my will. Meher Baba. On Sunday of my third day in hospital, our friends Roy, Jai Baba Roy, Jai Baba, and Roz Hayes visited. After my retelling the rescue to them, Roy said, "You've experienced the living faith that Baba has discoursed on." He emailed me the quote the next day, and it's from Baba's discourse on the qualifications of the aspirant, part 4, faith. Living faith has a vital relation with all the deeper forces and purposes of the psyche. It is creatively dynamic. There is not a thought but is enlivened by it. There is not a feeling but is illumined by it. There is not a purpose that is not recast by it. Living faith in the Master becomes a supreme source of inspiration, an unassailable self-confidence for the disciple, and expresses itself primarily through active reliance upon the Master, not merely through the opinion held about him. Living faith is an active attitude of confidence in the Master, expressing itself not only through trustful expectation of help, but through the spirit of self-surrender and dedication. Such fruitful and living faith in the Master is always born of some deep experience which the Master imparts to the disciple. This was it. The rescue was a deep experience that Baba used to instill this living faith within my consciousness, within my heart. And the gratitude to my Master for this gift is ever brimming in my eyes. Many people were touched by the ordeal that day, and it is most comforting to know that Matthew and my lives are ever intertwined, though we have never and may never meet again. Baba has done his work as only he can do, and I'm ever thankful to him for allowing me to share in this work. I am the slave of the Master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my Master does is of the highest benefit for all concerned. Living faith, here and now. The fog. 4 weeks after the rescue ordeal, Carolyn was officially diagnosed with Alzheimer's. We had expected the diagnosis in March of 2020, but the COVID lockdown delayed it. Nevertheless, when presented with the verdict, it was a shock. I was still very weak and in cardio rehab, along with shoulder rehab, and her disease's learning curve seemed almost insurmountable. We were both at wit's end and very distressed. It felt as though she had received a death sentence. My ship had suffered a severe knockdown and my compass was spinning, showing no bearing. It had only been a month since Baba had graced me with his living faith, but I was lost. And this gift of faith was being enveloped into the fog bank of my worrying mind. It was Carl, my long-standing sailing mate and fellow Baba lover of over 53 years, who helped me regain my course. Being a Coast Guardsman himself, he knew the depth of the rescue ordeal that I had gone through and reached out to me immediately following the event. He said it was imperative that I write down the account of that day. And so, with his editorial assistance, I started to write. But 3 weeks later, when the diagnosis was handed down, I stopped writing. I was too devastated and caught up in grief and fear. Again, Carl put his guiding hand on my ship's helm and said that now more than ever, you must write. It is your therapy. It was a struggle, but as I wrote, working with the last section of gratitude and living faith, the fog seemed to lift just a bit with the words, living faith is an active attitude of confidence in the Master, expressing itself not only through trustful expectation of help, but through the spirit of self-surrender and dedication. In late October, Rescued was completed and sent out to my worldwide Baba email list. Debbie Nordine responded immediately, and she sent it out to many of the Baba centers and groups around the world. Then, at the same time, when hearing of Carolyn's diagnosis, she reached out to us with her loving Baba Soul support, having supported her mother for her last 9 years of living with dementia. Here are some extracts from her email. After the initial shock of my mother's diagnosis, we went in a very positive direction, just as I know you are naturally going to do, Daniel. We learned so much about the importance and privilege from Baba to be a care partner with someone living with dementia. I found this Baba quote when Googling the word brain in Baba's repertoire. I just couldn't believe that Baba would have the brain plaque definition for what is really going on. The soul is not the brain. It functions the brain. The brain is the soul's instrument. Debbie continues, therefore, if the brain is the soul's instrument, whatever apparent brain condition anyone is experiencing is a condition that soul is directing for it to grow and flourish more and more. When my mom got an Alzheimer's diagnosis, I told Peter, I don't like the word Alzheimer's. It sounds scary. If I ever get Alzheimer's, let's call it Babaheimer's. It sounds, let's keep a sense of humor. Daniel, I can't tell you how precious it was to spend so much time with my mom during those last 9 years of life. My advice, carpe diem, live in the eternal, beautiful present. Baba says unequivocally, there is absolutely nothing to worry about. The fog was lifting more and more. Living faith was starting to become my compass rose. Broken heart. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, which I suffered from as a result of the rescue, is also known as the broken heart syndrome. It can be brought on through the grief of losing a close partner or the loss of a meaningful relationship. Carolyn and I had been married for 44 years when we got the diagnosis. Back in 1976, after a 6-week whirlwind romance in Myrtle Beach, which has become legend in Baba lore, we took our vows privately in the lagoon cabin on the Meher Spiritual Center. A life together of many ups and downs, countless moves, and raising 5 children, we persevered under Baba's watchful and guiding Nazar. Carolyn blossomed as a natural carer that had started when she raised her siblings and then into raising our children. She is a birth doula, a certified nurse assistant, an advocate in a domestic violence organization, a Reiki master, a personal carer, and a medical tech on a psych ward. From 1998 to 2004, she supported her mother, Verna, for her last 6 years of living with dementia. Carolyn's soft heart has always been open to family, friends, and those in need. We raised our kids together hand in hand. While I tried several avenues of work and jobs, some successful, so others not, and only enough income to keep our noses above water. I was the romantic, but with a crusty heart. The first 3 years of these last 5 are such a blur now. Grief and pain, anger and resentment, fear and worry, a time of transition and the reversal of caring roles. I didn't want this. I didn't want my partner losing her sense of identity. I didn't want the loss of our 44-year relationship. During this period, Baba was continually breaking open my crusty heart, revealing my lifelong self-stifling of my heart and the hurts I had inflicted upon others and upon myself. It was not smooth sailing, with painful headwinds and worrying cross-currents. But all the while, he was compassionately cutting out all these crusty barnacles. Beloved Baba was softening my heart. Service. Do not ever think that you are serving, but know that God makes you serve. This sort of service is really loving God. Meher Baba. I came across this quote about 9 years ago, but I only started appreciating it these last 2 years because of Baba's gift of an ever-softening heart. This service quote, in conjunction with living faith, fully illumes the carer's role. It is unambiguous, succinct, and so powerful. It gives strength to the carer to continue serving as only God can make one serve. As Baba says, living faith in the Master becomes a supreme source of inspiration and unassailable self-confidence for the disciple, and expresses itself primarily through active reliance upon the Master. Thus, the carer gains the self-confidence to carry out the duties of their role by relying upon their Master. Baba continues, living faith is an active attitude of confidence in the Master, expressing itself not only through trustful expectation of help, but through the spirit of self-surrender and dedication. Thus, the carer becomes fully confident of the Master's help in carrying out their duties and then surrendering the work to him. The lighthouse keeper. My sailing mate Carl has been best friend to Carolyn and me since the beginning of our marriage. We have been through many ups and downs over the years, but we have never failed to support each other in times of need. Last year, he sent this poem to me. As many have said, the smile, the eyes, the light of life within, a glimpse of the soul. You are her lighthouse keeper. Keep her shining. The work will be well done by grace. The marriage, then and now. In March of 1976, I was traveling on a train from Maine down to South Carolina to end up at the Meher Spiritual Center to live and work in the community. Somewhere in Connecticut, while reading Herman Hesse's Sid Arthur, I dozed off, and Baba said to me without language, "You are going to my center to get married." I responded, "You trickster!" "Oh, very well, Baba. But I ask one thing. Whoever it is that you choose, I want to remain together always and grow old together. He granted my wish with his sweet Carolyn. And I'm so grateful to him for these 49 years of marriage under his nazar. It seems that we have lived several lifetimes together through this union of 5 decades. So vast and all-encompassing. This partnership has nurtured not only us, but so many others who have come within its orbit. So what now? Pining for pre-dementia days leaves one within the quagmire of grief and pain and anger. So many couples and families fall prey to this never-ending grief and worry that becomes a vicious circle with no escape. Over the last 2 years of Baba softening my heart and helping me fully engage in my caring role, I have felt the grief receding with the outgoing tide. And by leaving the past behind and embracing the present, our marriage remains complete and intact. We are in the final phase, and it is ever beautiful, full of laughter and tears, hugs and silence, and the ever-increasing embrace of our beloved's kiss. Our wedding invitation contains a Baba quote that we had picked out together. It defined what we aspired for our union to be. Now in this twilight phase, it has filled our hearts. True love is no game of the faint-hearted and the weak. It is born of strength and understanding. I end with a prayer that I repeat every morning upon rising, throughout the day, and then before I go to sleep. Beloved Baba, help me to take and repeat your name. Baba, 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 Baba. Constantly and continuously, Baba, 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 Baba. Your most precious prasad, Baba, 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 Baba. So that I may abide in your loving presence and embrace while dancing with you, my beloved Baba, within your bedroom abode of my heart. While I am waking and throughout the day, while serving you, my beloved Baba, within your sweet, beloved Carolyn. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
The eyes of God. It has been 8 months since I presented Rescued Within Living Faith at the Spring Sahavas of 2025 with Carolyn in attendance. And it has been the same 8 months of Carolyn's Alzheimer's continuing to quicken her decline. However, she hung on for the goodbye visits from all her kids and grandchildren, giving her all to them. Wonderful times of heartwarming connection mixed with tears of departure. But Carolyn holds us all together within her Baba cheerfulness. Sunday morning coffee on Avatar's Abode has always been Carolyn's favorite social outing. With her beaming smile and Baba's love shining through her eyes, those around her felt great joy and Baba's presence. Starting at the beginning of 2026, after coffee, I would wheel her up in her chair to Baba's house to sit quietly in his room. These were precious times for her. Her communion with her beloved was palpable. Sunday, the 29th of March, I was assisting her down the 4 steps to the back driveway to step up into our car. But this day, she complained of intense pain in her legs. It was very slow going, and I wanted to forget the coffee and go back into the house. But she insisted on going. At coffee, she was quieter than usual, with only a slight smile. It seemed that she was withdrawing into the comfort of her beloved. We went up to Baba's room after saying goodbye to those around her at coffee. I wheeled her next to Baba's bed and sat on one of the chairs. After 10 minutes, I went up to her and asked if she was ready to go. "No," she said. "I need some more time." I sat back down, and as I looked up, she was staring at me with these eyes I had never seen, penetrating into my heart. After some time, she said, "I am done now." She must have known that this would be her last time in this body, taking her beloved's physical darshan. Little did I know. But within 2 days, I acknowledged her situation and made the decision that she was to stay home permanently. But I couldn't get the photo of her out of my mind. There was something haunting about the eyes, as if they were trying to tell me more. And then after a week or so, I realized that I had seen these eyes before. This John Perry painting hangs in Baba's house. It is my favorite painting on the Abode. John painted it in 1968 and gifted it to Francis Brabazon in the early 1970s. Roy Hayes, who was present when Francis unwrapped the painting, related that when Francis viewed it, he exclaimed that John had captured the eyes of God. It was a very emotional moment for Francis, as it was for me too, when I put the two photos side by side and saw a mirror reflection of the eyes of God. Carolyn acknowledges that she is at the end of this lifetime. She welcomes and embraces it, and always with that cheerfulness that is so infectious to all those around her. On the eve of his departure back to the States this last February, our son Elliot recorded this last message from his mom. It was meant for him, but really it is for all who share with Carolyn her love, devotion, and surrender to the Beloved's will.
Things will go well. What you have to do is just keep it happy. I don't know what else to say. I don't know.
Jai Meher Baba.